never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah. Wait, I think I'll last a bit longer. Find another.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. It is a Tuesday, and I've mentioned it before here on the channel, but in case you're new to the channel or do not watch every video, for some reason, and I never have figured out why, but for some reason, Tuesday has always been my favorite day of the week. So today is the best day of this week and every other week, in my personal opinion. But today, here on the channel, we're going to be talking some college football head coaching changes. And we'll talk about that coming up here in a couple of minutes. But first, I want to tell you what the current college basketball AP Top 25 is, since we are a few weeks into the college basketball season now. Most teams have played somewhere between 5 and 7 games. The number one team in college basketball right now is Purdue, followed by Arizona, Marquette, UConn, and Kansas. 6 through 10 is Houston, Duke, Miami in Florida, Baylor, and Tennessee. Then we have Gonzaga, Kentucky, Florida Atlantic, Texas A&M, and Creighton. Texas, North Carolina, Villanova, BYU, and Colorado State. And 21 through 25 is Mississippi State, James Madison, Alabama, Illinois, and the Oklahoma Sooners round out the top 25 in the current college basketball AP poll. And I know in terms of college football, the whole NIL thing is destroying college football. And if nothing changes, college football will be dead as we know it in less than 5 years. But honestly, really, truly, I think it's helping college basketball because there are double the teams in college basketball in Division I than there are in college football, because college basketball doesn't have the FCS like college football does. So all of the FCS teams in college football are part of Division I in college basketball. So whereas you only have around 130 Division I teams in college football, there's over 300 in college basketball. And college basketball does make money, but it doesn't make near the money college football does. And college basketball, because of that, I think is benefiting from the whole NIL thing, because you're seeing more and more teams like Colorado State and BYU and Mississippi State and James Madison and Florida Atlantic that you would never before see ranked in college basketball be legit powerhouses because of the whole NIL thing. So I think NIL is hurting college football, but I think it is balancing out the field and helping college basketball. But the final top 10 of the regular season in the college football AP poll looks like this: Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Florida State, Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, Missouri, and Penn State. So I believe that pretty much tells you that if Georgia, Michigan, Washington, and Florida State win this weekend in their conference championship games, that's your 4 playoff teams. But me personally, I think the 4 best teams in the country right now are Georgia, Michigan, Washington, and Texas. That would be my 4 playoff teams. And of course, Georgia, Michigan, Washington are the top 3. But if Texas wins this weekend, I personally would put them in over Florida State. Now, of course, it's all opinion based. We don't know because Texas and Florida State do not play each other. But I believe if they did play each other, I think Texas would beat them. So Texas would be my number 4 team. But of course, if they lose this weekend, it doesn't matter because they have no shot of getting in. Even if Florida State was to lose, if Texas loses, they ain't getting in. But let's look at some of the college football head coaching changes. Now, of course, we'll have to do more of these as the off season continues. It's just like the whole transfer portal thing. There's so much that goes on. If you just do one video on it, it's going to be an hour-long video, and that's just too long. So just like last off season when I did 4 or 5 different transfer portal videos, I'll probably be doing 3 or 4 videos about college football head coaching changes. But I want to go ahead and get you caught up on what's happened so far. First, let's look at all the schools that have a current opening, and then we'll look at all the schools that so far have filled the opening that they had. San Diego State has an opening because Brady Hoke retired. Now, Brady Hoke coached there before, and then he left, and of course he coached at Michigan, and that just didn't work out. So he ended up going back to San Diego State. He had 1 double-digit win season this time around, but outside of that, this go-around wasn't near as successful as his first go-around there. But now Brady Hoke is still really young, but I'm sure he's got the money to retire forever if he so chooses. But once you're a head coach, it's hard to get that out of your blood, out of your system. So don't be surprised if Brady Hoke tries to make a comeback in 4 or 5 years. But for now, he's retired. Houston fired Dana Holgorsen. Duke has an opening because Mike Elko left. More on that in a couple of minutes. Syracuse fired Dino Babers. Indiana fired Tom Allen. That's one that has caught most folks by surprise because Indiana has struggled the last couple of years. But around 2019, 2020, it looked like Tom Allen had turned Indiana around. And then all of a sudden, it just went downward, and it went downward in a hurry. Oregon State has an opening because Jonathan Smith left. Boise State fired Andy Avalos. New Mexico fired Danny Gonzalez. UTEP fired Dana Dimmel. And Louisiana Monroe fired Terry Bowden. So all those programs have an opening, and now the programs that had a potential opening, but they've all been filled. It was Northwestern. They hired David Braun. Now, David Braun was the guy who was named the interim coach after they fired Pat Fitzgerald in the offseason. But Northwestern had, I believe, a 1-win season in 2022. And this year, David Braun was the interim coach, and they won, I believe, 7 games. So they had a potential opening because for most of the season, David Braun was just the interim coach, but they've named him the full-time coach. Michigan State hired Jonathan Smith from Oregon State, and I mentioned this, I want to say it was in my Sunday video, but I'm not positive, that Jonathan Smith comes from Oregon State, and Oregon State was his alma mater, and it's very, very rare to see a coach get a head coaching job at his alma mater and leave on his own fruition. Typically, that's a coach's dream, is to be able to coach where you played at. That's your home school. That's what you want. So generally, if a coach gets a job where he played college football at, he's not leaving. He has to get fired. But Jonathan Smith is different because everybody left the Pac-12 except for 2 teams. Oregon State is one of those 2 teams. So we don't know what the future holds for them. Are they going to try to revamp the Pac-12 and pretty much make Oregon State the lead dog in that conference? Are they going to become independent? Are they going to go to FCS? Is the Pac-12 going to merge with the Mountain West? We don't know. So Oregon State's future is up in the air. So I think Jonathan Smith thought, you know what? I want to be able to coach at a school where I know what we're doing in the future, and I know what conference we're going to be in. And at Oregon State, they don't know, so I'm just going to leave. But he turned Oregon State around in a hurry. And Mississippi State hires Jeff Lebby. Now, Jeff Lebby was, at the time of this hiring, the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, but he's also been the OC at Central Florida and Ole Miss. He's been successful everywhere he's been as an OC, but of course, some coordinators become successful head coaches, and some coordinators become pitiful head coaches, and you don't know if you get a good one or bad one until you hire one. But I think this is Mississippi State's way to try to hopefully let Will Rogers stay and have him take his name out of the transfer portal, because Jeff Lebby pretty much runs the same kind of offense Mike Leach does. He's going to throw the ball 55 times a game. So I think they're trying to have Will Rogers stay. And Texas A&M hires Mike Elko from Duke, which is why Duke has the opening. And I also mentioned this in my video, I believe, on Sunday about Texas A&M, because late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, word came down that they were going to hire Mark Stoops from Kentucky. And then Sunday afternoon, Mark Stoops said he's going to stay at Kentucky. Now, we don't know exactly what happened, but Mike Elko was next in line. So when Mark Stoops said no, if Mark Stoops said no, Mike Elko was next. But I believe, and this is just my personal opinion, I have no inside knowledge of this, but I believe that Texas A&M did the same thing Tennessee did a few years back. And if they did, they shouldn't, because you should never hire a coach based on what the fans say, because fans don't know. That's why they're called fans. They're fanatics. But just because you're a fanatic of your team does not mean you know how to coach football. If you knew how to coach football, you wouldn't be on the couch. You'd be on the sidelines. But a few years back, when Tennessee was going through all their head coaching changes, they were going to hire Greg Schiano. And there was riots in the street in Knoxville because so many fans didn't want to hire Greg Schiano. And they thought Greg Schiano would be a terrible hire. So after Tennessee had pretty much made it public knowledge that Greg Schiano was going to be their next coach, The next day they backtracked and said, oh, no, never mind. We don't want Greg Schiano. Well, then they were going to hire Mike Leach. And the Tennessee fans said, we don't want Mike Leach either. He's all about offense. He don't play defense. We're not going to win if we can't play at least a little bit of defense. So they had Mike Leach on a plane to go to Knoxville to interview for the job, and they found out that all the Tennessee fans didn't want him, so they told Mike Leach, never mind, get off the plane, we're not hiring you. Well, in my Sunday video, I talked about how I didn't understand the Mark Stoops hire, because Mark Stoops has got Kentucky to pretty much consistently 7 or 8 wins, but that's all he's done. Now, he had one 10-win season, and in the history of Kentucky football, they've only had 2 coaches that gave them 10-win seasons, and that was Bear Bryant and Mark Stoops. But outside of that 10-win season, Kentucky goes 7-5, 8-4 every year. Well, that's the same thing Texas A&M does. So you run off Kevin Sumlin, who was pretty much an 8-win coach, to hire Jimbo Fisher, who's pretty much a 8-win coach. And then you're going to hire Mark Stoops, who's pretty much an 8-win coach. So all you were doing was hiring Jimbo Fisher 2.0. And I believe the A&M fans found out that Stoops was the hire, and I think they went berserk. They went crazy. They were rioting in the streets, and A&M said, never mind, we're not going to hire this guy. So they backed out on Stoops, and now rumor is Stoops told them he's going to stay at Kentucky. I don't think that's what happened. I think A&M called and said, never mind, our fans don't want you. We can't hire you, and Mike Elko was next in line. And if that's what A&M did, they're stupid, because you have not won a national championship since 1939, which to some people means you've never won one, because back in those days, teams didn't play for national championships. You got voted the national champion. You could go 3-7 and get votes for being a national champion. So according to some people, if you won titles back in those days, they didn't count. But A&M was awarded the national championship in 1939. It's been 84 years since they've won a national title, and they've got all the facilities, all the money in the world, and they can't win. And they've spent all this time listening to the fans, and it's got them nowhere. So if they're listening to the fans again, they're idiots, because obviously the fans don't know what they're doing, because the fans wanted Kevin Sumlin, didn't work. The fans wanted Jimbo Fisher, and it didn't work. So obviously the fans don't know what a football coach is. So if A&M did listen to the fans and back out on Stoops because the fans said it's a bad idea, they're idiots. Me personally, I don't think Mark Stoops would have won them a national championship, but I also don't think Mike Elko is going to win them a national championship. Now, who can? I think Jeff Traylor could have. Why they don't want him, I don't know. But you're in the state that spits out the most talent every single year, and you've got all those facilities and all that money, and you can't even sniff a national championship in 85 years, there's a problem. Stop listening to the fans. They don't know. If the fans knew, they wouldn't be fans. They'd be coaching somewhere. There's a reason why they call fans couch quarterbacks, because they're on the couch because they don't know. Any thoughts on any of this, please feel free to let me know. Homes for Our Troops is a publicly funded 501c nonprofit organization that builds and donates specially adapted custom homes nationwide for severely injured post 9/11 veterans. Since the 2004 inception, nearly 90 cents of every dollar spent has gone directly to our program services for veterans. Visit at hfotusa.org. let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. When I'm bored, I call Best Western Motels. And when they answer Best Western, I say True Grit with John Wayne, and then hang up. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.